She called me paranoid, then accidentally texted me his name. I met Marissa on a Tuesday afternoon that didn't mean anything until it did. I was between job sites, sweaty, covered in drywall dust, and waiting in line at this little cafe near the warehouse district where I always grab lunch. She was behind me, arguing with someone over the phone about countertop colors, and when the call dropped, she muttered something sarcastic under her breath that made me laugh out loud. She glanced at me, half annoyed, half amused, and before I could stop myself, I offered to buy her a coffee as an apology for eavesdropping. She rolled her eyes and said I could pay for her muffin instead. That was our first real conversation, me in a Hivas vest, her in a long beige coat, black ankle boots, hair up in one of those lazy yet perfect buns, holding a leather folder like it contained state secrets. She had that look of someone who didn't just walk into a room. She recalibrated it. Everything about her felt intentional, measured, like she knew the effect she had and chose to wield it like a whisper instead of a shout. She wasn't flashy. Her makeup was subtle, her clothes neutral, her jewelry minimal. But she had this bone structure, these long legs, those slate gray eyes that made you feel like she was seeing something in you no one else had noticed. She had the kind of presence that made you straighten your posture without realizing. That day, she ordered an espresso and a lemon muffin. I got my usual turkey club and forgot to ask for no pickles. We sat at separate tables, but when she left, she smiled at me like we shared a secret. That was all it took. Over the next few weeks, we ran into each other 2 more times. Once at the same cafe, once at a supply store. Turns out we both worked in overlapping fields. I was a contractor doing mostly custom renovations. She was an interior consultant and stager who worked with luxury real estate agents prepping homes for market. The 3rd time we crossed paths, I asked her out properly. She raised an eyebrow and said, "About time," and I remember thinking I had no idea if she was serious or just good at timing. Our first date was drinks, not dinner. She said it was safer that way, less commitment if things got weird. But it didn't get weird. It got easy. Fast. Within 2 hours, we were laughing like we'd known each other for years. She told me about her childhood in Connecticut, her love for art galleries, her hatred of motivational quotes. I told her about my dad's old tool shop, how I flipped my first place when I was 24, and how I'd never been good at small talk. She liked that. Said I was usefully honest. I wasn't sure what that meant, but I went with it. 6 months in, she started leaving a toothbrush at my place. 8 months in, she moved in completely. We bought our house just over a year later, a 2-story modern craftsman on a quiet cul-de-sac with a tree-lined backyard and room for a garden she kept promising to plant. She chose the color palette. I handled the tools. She made it Instagram-worthy. I made sure the water pressure worked. We made a good team. At least that's what I thought. We got married a year after moving in. Small ceremony in a converted barn. String lights, handwritten vows, an acoustic guitarist playing songs we both sort of recognized but couldn't name. She wore a fitted white dress that flared just below the knee and had a low back that made everyone do a double take when she walked past. No veil. No train. Just her, a pair of white heels, and a look in her eyes that made me feel like I was standing in the center of the universe. I still remember the way she said, "I do." Like it was an agreement she'd already made with herself weeks ago. Like it was just formality. She never cried, not even during the vows. She smiled, posed perfectly for every photo, and clutched my hand just tight enough to make sure I didn't let go. Our first year of marriage was efficient. That's the word I'd use now. We settled into routines fast. She took over managing the household calendar, color-coded everything, kept our shared drive organized like a digital shrine to productivity. I didn't mind. I liked having structure. I was the one who handled the budgeting, the taxes, the maintenance schedules. She handled the presentation. Together, we looked like we had our lives completely figured out. And maybe for a while, we did. She hosted book clubs and wine nights. She made Pinterest boards for every season. She scheduled dental cleanings 6 months in advance. Our home was the kind of place people walked into and said, "Wow, you guys really have it together." That comment used to make me feel proud. Later, it would make me sick. Marissa had this ability to make people feel comfortable while never really giving them access to anything beneath the surface. Even me. She could talk for hours about trends, design theory, podcasts, her favorite minimalists. But the moment I asked her how she was really feeling, she'd smile and say, "I'm fine." Always fine. I didn't push. I thought giving her space was respect. I didn't realize I was giving her room to build a second life. But back then, everything felt normal. Stable. We went on trips once or twice a year, short ones, long weekends, usually wine country or boutique hotels with spas she liked. She hated tourist traps. Said she preferred places designed for people who already know who they are. She was always saying things like that. Sounded deep, didn't mean much. Still, I found it charming. I let her make the reservations, choose the restaurants, dictate the playlists. I didn't mind following. I thought that was part of marriage. Balance. We weren't the overly affectionate couple, but we were aligned. Or so I thought. We made decisions together. Talked about freezing embryos just in case. Discussed investing in a second property one day. I'd come home after long days and find her sitting on the couch with a glass of red, legs tucked under her, watching design tutorials on YouTube like it was religion. She'd wave me over without looking up and pat the cushion beside her. I'd sit. She'd lean her head on my shoulder. It felt warm, familiar, safe, and that was enough for me. I never needed fireworks. I just wanted someone to come home to. Someone who didn't make me feel like I had to perform. I thought that's what I had. Looking back, I think Marissa liked the idea of marriage more than the practice. She liked the image, the control, the curated life. She liked hosting, organizing, presenting a version of us that made people envious. She liked compliments on her taste. She liked being the cool wife at dinner parties. But I'm not sure she ever saw me the way I saw her. Not as a partner. Maybe just a prop. And if I ever sensed that, I buried it. Because I loved her. And I wanted it to be real. So I told myself it was. Every time she smiled at me from across the room, every time she posted a photo of our perfectly arranged kitchen, every time she curled into me at night and said, "We're lucky, aren't we?" I said yes. Yes, we are. But luck is just a moment before the fall. And the fall was coming. Tyler's been in my life longer than anyone besides my mother. We grew up next door to each other on a dead-end street lined with cracked sidewalks and overgrown hedges. The kind of neighborhood where kids still rode bikes until the streetlights flickered on and nobody locked their doors at night. He was the loud one, the fearless one, the kid who climbed trees too fast and jumped off things that were definitely too high. And I was the one who followed behind yelling things like, "You're gonna break your neck," before doing it anyway. We were glued at the hip from the time we were 5. We built forts out of cardboard boxes, played video games until our eyes burned, and got into exactly one fight. Over a broken slingshot, before swearing we'd never argue again. Our moms used to say we were more like brothers than best friends, and it never really changed, even as life got messy. In middle school, we were on the same soccer team. In high school, we dated girls from the same friend group and covered for each other when curfews got missed. He was always a little more reckless than me, a little more charming too. He had this way of talking to people like he'd known them forever, made friends fast, and kept them without trying. People like Tyler. Teachers, coaches, parents. He was the guy everyone assumed would do something big one day. But like a lot of people who burn bright early, he lost steam somewhere along the way. After graduation, he floated. Did a semester at community college, dropped out, worked at a car rental place, then started doing freelance photography and stuck with it longer than I expected. He had talent, especially with portraits, and by his late 20s, he'd carved out a decent client base. Nothing flashy, but enough to keep him moving. I never minded that he didn't figure it out right away. I didn't need him to have a 5-year plan. I just needed him to be there, and he always was. Every breakup, every job switch, every family funeral. When my dad passed, it was Tyler who handled the calls I couldn't make. When I bought my first house to flip, it was Tyler who showed up with beer and pizza on demo day and stayed late just to keep me company while I painted trim. He wasn't perfect. He drank too much at weddings, forgot birthdays, ghosted people when he got overwhelmed, but he was loyal. At least I thought he was. Even as we got older and our lives started drifting in different directions, we stayed connected. I got serious about real estate. He got serious about his camera work. We didn't talk every day, but we didn't need to. When we did catch up, it was easy. Same jokes, same shorthand, same rhythm. We'd meet for wings and beers, talk about work, argue over sports, complain about taxes, all the usual things two 30-something men talk about when they're pretending not to age. When I met Marissa, he was one of the first people I introduced her to. I remember the exact moment they met. He showed up to a backyard barbecue wearing aviators and some graphic tee from a band he didn't even like anymore, and she made fun of him instantly. Called him Mr. 2009. He laughed, called her Mrs. Pinterest, and just like that, they clicked. I wasn't surprised. Tyler got along with everyone. But something about the way he got along with Marissa made things feel smoother than usual. Like their banter wasn't just friendly, but familiar. I didn't think much of it back then. I was happy they liked each other. That my two favorite people could joke around and coexist in the same room without weird tension. At the time, it felt like winning the lottery. So I kept inviting him over. He came to our housewarming party, helped us move furniture, took our engagement photos for free, made a slideshow for our wedding reception. Whenever we needed a +1 for dinner or an extra set of hands for home projects, he was the first call. Marissa even joked once that he was our house pet. Tyler just rolled his eyes and said, "Yeah, well, I don't shed." He had a couple of serious relationships over the years. The last one was with a girl named Justine. It looked like it might stick. She was kind, a little nerdy, grounded in a way that seemed to balance him out. They were talking about getting engaged. I was genuinely happy for him. I remember telling Marissa one night after dinner, "You might finally be growing up," and she smirked and said, "Wouldn't count on it." That relationship ended like most of Tyler's did, quietly and quickly. One week he was planning a trip with her to Vermont. The next he was crashing on his cousin's couch and refusing to talk about it. After that, he was single. Said he was focusing on work. Said he needed to figure out who he was without being someone's +1. I respected it. I even admired it. But looking back now, I wonder if that breakup wasn't the start of something darker. Something opportunistic. Once Marissa and I were married, Tyler became a fixture in our lives. We invited him for holidays, birthdays, movie nights, Sunday football. He was our third wheel, our designated photographer, our emergency contact when we were out of town. I trusted him with my house, my schedule, even my spare keys. When I had to fly out for a family emergency, he's the one who watered Marissa's plants and brought in the mail. I didn't think twice. Because in my mind, there was no Tyler without loyalty. No version of him that didn't include me at the center of his inner circle. We weren't just childhood friends. We were lifers. Ride or die. There were signs, of course. Little moments I wouldn't notice until later. The way he stopped bringing dates to our gatherings. The way he'd show up early to help Marissa prep for things when I was stuck at work. The way he'd stay behind to help clean up while I was putting away tools or answering emails in the other room. At the time, I saw it as generosity, familiarity, comfort. I'd known him my whole life. I'd married her. What could possibly go wrong? That's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't come from enemies. It comes from people you've let into the softest parts of your life. The ones who know where all the lines are and exactly how to cross them without getting caught. Tyler knew everything about me. Every insecurity. Every blind spot. Every pattern. If anyone was equipped to slip in unnoticed and take what wasn't his, it was him. And he did. But at this point in the story, I didn't know that yet. All I knew was that I had a best friend I trusted and a wife I adored. And they laughed a little louder when they were together. Shared looks I didn't understand. Had inside jokes that I didn't always catch. And I told myself it was normal. That it was a gift to have a best friend and a wife who liked each other. That I was lucky. I clung to that idea for longer than I should have. Because the thing about Tyler was, he was always around. But I never noticed how deeply he'd embedded himself into our lives until it was already too late. Looking back, I don't think it started with some grand betrayal or secret plan. I think it started in the quiet, in the spaces between words, in the seconds too long. It started with small changes, so subtle you'd miss them if you weren't paying attention. But I was paying attention, even if I didn't know why yet. I just knew something felt off. It was the way Marissa laughed at his jokes. That sounds harmless, I know, but it wasn't the laugh she gave strangers or coworkers. It was the one I used to get the real one. The slightly too loud one that cracked through her polished shell and showed a glimpse of the girl who once danced barefoot in my kitchen while burning frozen waffles. She started giving that laugh to Tyler. And I started noticing. At first, I told myself I was imagining it. That I was being insecure. That maybe I was jealous of their chemistry, not because of what it was, but because of how easy it seemed. Tyler had always been good with women, always had that charismatic ease I never quite managed. And Marissa, well, she was drawn to confidence. She liked clever. She liked quick comebacks and witty banter. I figured it made sense they'd click. She even told me once it was nice to have someone around who spoke her language. I laughed it off, but I didn't forget it. It wasn't just the laughter. It was the looks. The kind that flash across a room when no one's supposed to notice. The kind you can't explain if someone calls it out. I'd be in the kitchen grabbing drinks and glance back to the living room, and there it was, her looking at him like she used to look at me. And him? He always met her gaze. Always held it just a second too long. Then they'd break it, like kids caught whispering during class. One night during a movie, I walked in with a bowl of popcorn, and they were sitting just a little too close. Not touching. Not inappropriate. But close. Like people who weren't afraid of the space between them anymore. And the second they saw me, they shifted. I pretended I didn't see. I told myself it was just the couch. Just the angle. Just my mind running wild. They stopped following each other on Instagram around that time. I noticed because I happened to open Marissa's page and saw that Tyler wasn't in her following list anymore. I checked his too. Same thing. I asked her casually if they had a falling out or something, and she shrugged it off. Said, "It's social media, who cares?" But they still joked together in person. Still exchanged glances. Still shared stories. If anything, it made things feel worse, like they were deliberately keeping it clean online, so no one would suspect how close they really were offline. It was too tidy. Too careful. Tyler started coming around more often, too. At first, it was just Sundays for football. Then it was Thursday dinners. Then random drop-ins. He always had a reason, a package delivered to our house by mistake, a new beer he wanted me to try, some funny story he forgot to tell me earlier. I didn't mind seeing him, but I started to notice something strange. The longer he stayed, the quieter I became. Like I was shrinking in my own home. The two of them would talk over me, laugh together, finish each other's references. Sometimes I'd be mid-sentence and one of them would interrupt without even realizing. It wasn't malicious. It was natural. That's what made it worse. There was one night I can't shake. We were all having dinner at our place, just takeout and some drinks, nothing fancy. I got up to throw away a napkin, and when I came back, they were leaning across the table toward each other, laughing about something I didn't hear. She reached out to grab his wrist in that playful, harmless way people do when they're laughing too hard. And for a split second, neither of them noticed I was standing there. That second stretched. Then she looked up, saw me, and pulled her hand back so fast it might as well have burned her. Tyler raised his beer like a shield and said something about how the sauce was spicier than expected. I nodded, sat down, didn't say a word, but I remember exactly where her fingers were on his arm. I remember how he didn't flinch when she touched him. I remember thinking that was too familiar. After that night, I started watching them more carefully, not obsessively, just observantly. I noticed how she always refilled his glass before mine. How he complimented her outfit every time he saw her, even if it was just a t-shirt and jeans. How they laughed at inside jokes I didn't remember being part of. One night, I walked into the room and saw them standing close by the sink, talking in low voices. Nothing in their posture said, affair. But everything in the air between them screamed this is not what it looks like. And that's the thing, it wasn't. It wasn't blatant. It wasn't obvious. It was invisible to anyone who didn't know what their life used to feel like before something shifted. Marissa changed too, slowly. She became more guarded with her phone, more tired, more easily irritated. Said she was stressed from work, had deadlines, didn't sleep well. I believed her. I wanted to believe her. But I also noticed she started working later, on nights when Tyler just happened to be in the area and dropped by after I went to bed. She said he was helping her fix a presentation one night. Another time, he brought over a hard drive with some photos he wanted her opinion on. She said it was harmless. Said I could join them, but by the time I got out of the shower, he was already leaving. Said he had to be up early. She smiled. I smiled back. Neither of us believed each other. It's strange how your body knows before your mind does. The tension in your chest when something doesn't add up. The coldness in your hands when you hear your wife laugh a little too loud at your best friend's joke. The ache in your jaw from grinding your teeth while pretending everything is fine. That's how it started for me. Not with a discovery. Not with evidence. With a feeling. And feelings are easy to dismiss, especially when the people around you are experts at telling you you're overthinking it. I didn't have proof. I didn't even have a clear accusation. All I had was the hollow space where trust used to live. And the growing suspicion that the two people I loved most might be sharing something behind my back. I didn't say anything. I didn't accuse. I didn't confront. Because when you confront something too soon, people get careful. They cover their tracks. They rewrite their behavior to seem innocent. I wasn't ready for that. Not yet. I needed to be sure. So I waited. And watched. And somewhere inside, I started preparing for the storm. What would you do if your home no longer felt like yours? If the air changed when you walked into the room? If the laughter you used to love now felt like a private joke you weren't allowed to hear? Would you ask questions? Or would you stay silent? hoping they'd slip. That's where I was. Sitting in my own house, watching the cracks form under my feet, praying one of them would make a mistake. And then one night, she did. It happened on a Wednesday night. Not the kind of night where anything's supposed to go wrong. Not stormy, not dramatic. Just quiet. Still. The kind of night where everything feels too normal. I was sitting on the couch, halfway through an email on my laptop with some cooking show murmuring in the background, and she was across the room on the armchair, scrolling her phone. That's it. That's the whole scene. Two married people, lost in their own screens, pretending we weren't growing further apart with every tap and swipe. I wasn't looking for anything. Not that night. I wasn't analyzing glances or tracking timelines or watching the way she laughed at her screen. I was tired, mentally foggy, just trying to finish one last client report before bed. And then my phone buzzed. I glanced down out of habit. Notification preview. A text from her. Just one word. One name. Tyler. That was it. Just his name, all by itself. My stomach dropped before my brain could even process why. It was like my body knew before I did. I stared at the screen, heart suddenly racing like I'd been caught in something I didn't do. And then it came, the second message. I can't stop thinking about last night. I blinked. Time slowed. The air around me felt heavier. My mind scrambled for a logical explanation. Maybe it wasn't what it looked like. Maybe it was an inside joke. Maybe she meant to send it to someone else with the same name. And then, like it had never existed at all, the message vanished. Deleted. I opened the chat. Nothing. Not a single trace. No preview. No notification tag. No, this message was removed. Just silence. I looked across the room at her. She was still staring at her phone, perfectly composed. Thumb sliding slowly across the screen, legs tucked underneath her like she hadn't just dropped a truth I couldn't unsee or ignore. If she noticed the expression on my face, she didn't show it. I turned my phone over in my lap, slowly, and stared at the blank screen like it owed me answers. I didn't say anything. Not right away. Because in that moment, something inside me didn't just break, it hardened. Froze. Like steel left out in the snow. All those weeks of doubt, of watching, of wondering if I was just being sensitive, if I was overthinking every glance and laugh and late-night whisper, they all folded into that 1 second. That one text. And she sent it to me. The irony of it almost made me laugh. All this time, she'd been gaslighting me with smiles and routines and carefully timed affection, and then she goes and hands me the truth on a silver platter. Accidentally. Carelessly. Like she was so deep into whatever they were doing, her muscle memory betrayed her. Wrong window. Wrong recipient. Perfect disaster. I wanted to ask her why. I wanted to scream. To flip the table. To demand to know where they'd been and what they'd done and how long it had been happening under my nose. But I didn't. Because I knew how this game worked now. If I reacted, she'd retreat. Deny. Cry. Flip the story and make it mine somehow. That's what narcissists do. They don't admit. They perform. They script new narratives with just enough truth to sound convincing. And I wasn't about to give her the opening to start rewriting. So I said nothing. I sat there and watched her type. Probably texting him now. Covering tracks. Making excuses. Spinning a new version of last night's events in case he panicked. I imagined his face when she told him what she did. The panic. The realization. Maybe even amusement. I wouldn't know. I didn't need to. Because what mattered wasn't what they said to each other. What mattered was that I finally had my answer. The thing I'd been afraid to name. The thing I'd tried to rationalize, explain away, forgive in advance. She wasn't mine anymore. Maybe she never had been. That night, I didn't sleep. I laid next to her in silence, staring at the ceiling while she slept like nothing happened. I could hear her breathing. Slow. Steady. Peaceful. My chest was a battlefield. My thoughts were a swarm of wasps. I kept replaying the moment. Her name popping up on my screen. The name Tyler sitting there like a blade. The follow-up message. The deletion. The look on her face when she caught me glancing at her. Blank. Unreadable. Or maybe just practiced. I thought of every dinner, every movie night, every touch between them that I ignored. Every compliment I brushed off. Every time I told myself, they're just close. And now I couldn't unsee it. Couldn't unhear that text. Couldn't unfeel the crack it left in my chest. By morning, I had a plan. Not revenge. Not yet. Just focus. Precision. I knew I couldn't confront her without more. She'd twist it. Say it was nothing. Say I was overreacting to a message with no proof. And technically, she'd be right. It was deleted. There was no evidence. Nothing but my own memory and a sick feeling in my gut. But I knew what I saw, and now I needed more. Something undeniable. Something I could hold in my hand and say, this is what you did. So I started watching. Carefully. Quietly. I tracked patterns. Took mental notes. Backed up my phone. Synced our shared accounts. Set up secondary logins. I studied her routines like a scientist. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. Not even Tyler. Especially not Tyler. I wanted them to feel safe. Untouched. Hidden. Because people only get sloppy when they think they're secure. I was going to let them feel secure. I wasn't angry yet. That would come later. What I felt was colder. Sharper. Like I'd stepped into another version of myself. A version that had no patience left for illusions. A version that would not be gaslit or manipulated or made to feel crazy ever again. I'd given her my loyalty, my trust, my whole damn life. And she threw it away for a man who used to sleep on my couch. She didn't even have the decency to cover her tracks properly. That was the insult. That she thought I was too dumb to notice. Too loyal to suspect. Too slow to catch up. But I was already miles ahead. People like Marissa, they don't think they can be caught. They build their lies like cathedrals, with high walls and stained glass windows, expecting people to admire them from the outside without ever stepping in. But I'd stepped in now. I'd seen the cracks. I'd heard the hollow echo inside. And I was done pretending I didn't. That message was the beginning of the end. Not just for them, but for everything. For the life we'd built, the marriage we shared, the version of myself that still believed in her. It all ended in that moment, with one buzz, one name, one sentence that was never meant for me. And now that I had it, there was no going back. The next phase had begun. It wasn't about suspicion anymore. It was about strategy. It was about evidence. And eventually about justice. After the message, something in me snapped, but not the way she would have expected. I didn't explode. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. That would have given her control. She twisted into paranoia, manipulated into doubt, turned herself into the victim before I ever had a chance to process what I saw. I knew her too well by then. Knew how she'd weaponize guilt. How she'd cry on cue. How she'd look me in the eye and ask how I could even think such a thing. That was Marissa's gift, making you feel like the bad guy for daring to see through her smile. So I didn't give her the satisfaction. Instead, I let her keep smiling. I nodded when she kissed me goodbye. Laughed at her jokes. Told her she looked beautiful when she got dressed for work. And all the while, I was laying the foundation for her collapse. The first thing I did was back up her phone. She had an old iPad that was still logged into her Apple ID, and I remembered where she kept it, stuffed in a drawer in the guest room we never used. She hadn't touched it in months. I turned it on, connected it to our Wi-Fi, and synced it in silence while she was out on a client dinner. Within minutes, I had access to everything she thought she was hiding. iMessages, photos, notes, even the deleted ones, some were still cached. And there he was, Tyler. Their thread was labeled just with a heart emoji. Subtle, cute, safe, she probably thought, but not safe enough. I didn't open everything right away. I didn't need to. Not yet. What I wanted was a pattern, a timeline. I started logging their messages, screenshots, backups, cloud extractions. I archived the ones that mattered, stored them on encrypted drives, uploaded copies to a secure server only I could access. I was methodical, detached. Every night after she fell asleep, I'd sit on the edge of the bed and record the truth like a scientist analyzing a pattern. I noted locations, timestamps, references. I matched messages to real-life events, had a great time last night, matched to the night she told me she was at a work event. Your hands were shaking when I left, matched to the night Tyler had stayed after our game night and offered to help clean up. I found photos. Nothing explicit, she was too smart for that. But the selfies in his car, the inside jokes in their texts, the matching drink orders from places she never mentioned visiting, it was enough. More than enough. I didn't stop there. I checked our shared finances. She had her own credit card, separate from our joint account, but I still saw charges, Uber rides that didn't line up with her work calendar, hotel transactions labeled as meeting space rentals, in cities she wasn't supposed to be in. She was sloppy. Confident. That's the thing about people who think they're smarter than everyone else. They eventually stop hiding because they believe no one's looking. And she truly believed I wasn't looking. Then I turned my attention to Tyler. I started slow. I wanted to see if he'd crack on his own. I sent him a text one afternoon while she was out shopping. You and Marissa seem close lately. Just that. Nothing else. 5 minutes later, he replied, LOL nah, you're imagining things. And that reply, that panicked casualness, was all I needed to confirm he was sweating. I waited a few days and then invited him out for drinks, just the two of us, like old times. He showed up grinning, same old Tyler, and played it cool the whole time. I played it cooler. I let him talk. Let him ramble about work, about how dating was a joke lately, about how he missed the days when things were simple. I watched his eyes every time Marissa's name came up. Watched his hands when I mentioned how busy she'd been. He fidgeted, lied, said he hadn't seen her in weeks, even though I knew he'd been at our house the day before while I was working late. He didn't know I'd left the camera on. That was the next step, surveillance. I wasn't going to confront them with speculation. I wanted silence, footage, receipts. So I set up hidden cameras. Subtle ones. A smoke detector in the hallway. A photo frame in the living room. A USB charger in the bedroom. Nothing illegal. Nothing outrageous. Just passive observation. And every frame told me the same story. When I was gone, he came over. When I was home, he vanished. They never kissed on camera. Never touched. But it was there, in the body language. The closeness. The lingering looks. The way she lit up when she heard the door open, and it wasn't me. That was all I needed. During this time, I also started separating finances. Quietly. I pulled my name from the joint investment account. Transferred my half of the emergency fund to a private one. Froze the home equity line we'd opened together. Paused auto payments. She didn't notice. Too distracted. Too sure of herself. I also visited a lawyer. Just to update my will, I told her. But what I really did was prepare a financial separation agreement that would kick in the moment I filed. We bought the house together, but my contributions had outpaced hers by nearly 70%. And I had proof. And then, I did something a little petty. I created a fake email. A fake woman. I used AI photos and a believable LinkedIn profile. Reached out to Tyler through a client referral. She was an event coordinator who loved photographers and wanted to collaborate. He took the bait. Fast. They exchanged 3 emails before he asked if she was single. I let it ride a bit. Gave him attention. Flattered him. Suggested a coffee meetup. Then ghosted him. I wanted him distracted. Nervous. Off balance. And while he scrambled to understand what happened, I planted the real trap. I took a day off work. Told Marissa I had meetings across town. Left the house dressed like normal. Then circled back. Parked 2 blocks away. Walked the alley behind our property. Slipped in through the side gate, silent. Waited. 2 hours later, Tyler pulled into the driveway. Let himself in with the code he wasn't supposed to have anymore. I watched through the window. He brought lunch. They talked. Laughed. She touched his arm. I recorded all of it. Then I left. Silent. Invisible. Done. I now had everything I needed. Photos. Messages. Video. Logs. Transactions. Timestamps. Lies. And all of it stored in multiple places. Cloud. Flash drives. Hard copies. 1 box labeled in case of gaslight. I was ready. She still didn't suspect. She still kissed me goodnight, still left motivational quotes on the fridge, still posted filtered selfies of our perfect life. But I had already left emotionally. The only reason I stayed physically was to watch the last act of her performance before I tore down the stage. The day I planned to pull the trigger was already on the calendar. It was our anniversary. Because if she wanted to build a fantasy, I was going to make damn sure she drowned in it. I could have left in silence. I had every piece of evidence, every legal document, every bank transfer lined up like chess moves. I could have vanished and let her spiral in the privacy of her own lies. But that wouldn't have been enough. Not after what she did. Not after she looked me in the eyes every day and smiled like she wasn't sleeping with the man I called family. Not after she used my love, my loyalty, and my silence as tools to build her second life. No. Quiet wasn't enough. Not this time. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to fight. I was going to destroy the only thing that ever mattered to someone like Marissa, her image. So when I walked out that door for the last time, I didn't just leave behind a box of evidence. I left behind the truth packaged to detonate everything she pretended to be. And when it went off, it didn't make a sound. It made an impact. She came home on our anniversary to an empty house. No warning. No note. Just a single box on the kitchen table with her name on it. Inside, neatly organized, was everything she had buried. Printed screenshots of every message. Photos. Timestamps. His name. Her words. A flash drive with video footage, audio clips, the date-stamped records of every lie she told. And on top of it all, a signed financial separation agreement. My name already filled in. She didn't have to call a lawyer. She just had to read. I imagine she cried. Maybe she screamed. Maybe she stood in that kitchen frozen while her reflection in the oven door stared back at her like a stranger. I wasn't there to see it. I didn't need to be. I had already done the real damage somewhere else. While she was reading the fine print on what she was losing, I posted the truth. One carefully worded post. One image. One caption. Nothing graphic. Nothing slanderous. Just enough. A screenshot of the message she had sent me by mistake, his name, the sentence about last night, and a single sentence from me. When your wife accidentally texts you about the man she's actually in love with. That was it. No tagging. No names. But everyone who needed to know knew. And within an hour, the messages started. From friends. From acquaintances. From people we had hosted at our home. Her friends. My friends. Our mutual circles. Some asking if it was true. Others already knew. A few sent sympathy. But most were shocked. And when I didn't delete the post, didn't edit it, didn't flinch, people believed it. I didn't have to smear her name. I let the truth speak for itself. And it did. Loudly. People we'd spent holidays with began unfollowing her. Old colleagues removed her from group chats. 2 couples we'd double-dated with reached out to me privately to say they weren't surprised. Said they'd noticed things. Said they were sorry. I didn't reply. I wasn't looking for support. I was giving her a mirror. A perfectly polished reflection of what she really was, and she couldn't look away. Tyler didn't fare much better. He lost a major client 2 days later. One that I used to refer him to. Apparently, professionalism matters in his industry. And the quiet implication that he betrayed both a client and a lifelong friend didn't sit well. I didn't have to say a word. All I did was stop protecting him. And the fallout took care of itself. Marissa tried damage control, of course. I heard through someone that she called it a misunderstanding. That she tried to tell her friends we were already separated when it happened. But timelines don't lie. Screenshots don't stutter. People aren't stupid. They know when someone's covering their tracks after being caught barefoot in the fire. Her followers dropped. Her DMs dried up. She stopped posting for a while. When she came back, it was all motivational quotes and curated silence. No mentions of our marriage. No photos from the house. Just vague captions about healing and growth, trying to reclaim a narrative that no one believed anymore. The best part? I never spoke publicly again. I never gave a second update. I never defended or elaborated or explained. I let her sit in the silence. Let her wonder how much people knew, how far the truth had traveled, how many of her friends had shared the screenshots behind her back. That was the real punishment. Not the breakup. Not the financial hit. The silence. The isolation. The fear that she was no longer admired. That the version of herself she worked so hard to perform no longer existed in anyone's mind but hers. As for me, I moved into a small apartment across the city. Quiet place. Clean. No shared walls. No memories. I kept my head down, rebuilt my routines, cut ties with the people who stayed neutral. I didn't want sympathy. I wanted peace. And that's exactly what I got. Every day, I woke up knowing I had chosen myself. That I hadn't yelled. I hadn't stooped. I hadn't played her games. I had just exposed her. And walked away. People say revenge is best served cold. I disagree. I think it's best served quiet, clean, and witnessed by just enough people to ruin the performance. And that's exactly what I gave her. Considering I was betrayed by both my wife and my best friend, did I go far enough?